everybody, Dennis, and we're back with another Ranked and Reviewed. And today, I never know how to do that. It's like, how many variations can I do of Ranked and Reviewed? That's what the series is called. Ranked and Reviewed. Ranked! And Reviewed. And today we're going to be doing one of my top 10 favorite bands. I think it's might be the only top 10 band I haven't done yet. Let me consult my list real quick. Top 10 bands. Let's see. Limp Bizkit, Sum 41, Architects, Korn, Trivium, Megadeth, Papa Roach, Killswitch, and Flames. Yep, Linkin Park's the last one. Linkin Park sits in the middle of that top 10, by the way. But every other band in my top 10 I've done, so be sure to subscribe to the channel, check out the Ranked and Reviewed playlist for all of those, and then, of course, many other bands that I've done. But with regard to Linkin Park, it's simply not fair to rank their entire discography. So as you can probably tell by the thumbnail and the name of the video, we are only doing their post-NuMetal days from 2007 up until 2017. Instead of 17 years worth of albums, we're only doing 10, because let's face it, this holy grail of this holy trilogy right here shan't be touched. You can't touch the Crown Jewel album, which it's missing the jewel case. But this is from my childhood. This was the first album I ever got that really got me into this genre of music. You can't touch the remix of that album, which has a lot of nostalgia and power as well, and a lot of musical brilliance for its time, the early 2000s. Then, of course, the ultimate sophomore success, which sometimes fluctuates between being their best album and their second best, depending on how I'm feeling, but Meteora is meteoric. So it's not even fair to add those to the mix, because it's easily their best. I would say, just as, you know, subjectively a huge NuMetal fan, of course I'm going to lean towards those. That's their golden years, but let's also not pretend that the albums that followed, the five I'm going to be ranking here, are also not great in their own respect. And depending on your preference or accessibility, Linkin Park selling out or expanding their sound and experimenting, they have certainly released a lot of great music, and I'm excited to look at these five. I think my mock ranking came out about as exactly as I had predicted, but I needed to check with a few things. But out of the five, I tried to get the ones I'm missing, but I have two of them. I have one more. I have, their last two albums, and as you've heard me say in maybe previous videos about Linkin Park, be sure to check out my One More Light retrospective video, and then maybe my 15-year anniversary Hybrid Theory video. So I go into more detail with those albums and other videos. I'm pointing as if I'm going to put them up here. We'll see if I do that. But I'm trying to handle this subject gingerly, because even though it's been over 4 years now, Chester's death still weighs heavy on many of us. He's still one of my all-time favorite frontmen, and he had the voice for a generation, for a genre, and is just incredible. So understand that, like with, it wouldn't be ranked and reviewed unless I said this, I don't hate any albums, but obviously some are better than others, and I'm looking at this objectively and subjectively. So understand I approach this gingerly, but it is certainly worth a revisit to see, outside of the golden years, the NuMetal years, when was Linkin Park at their peak? So 5 albums: Minutes to Midnight, Thousand Suns, Living Things, Hunting Party, and One More Light. How do they stack up? And then the only reason I'll need my notes is to rattle off my top 10 songs, because I already know everything about these albums. It didn't really take a heavy re-listen to these, but I wanted to just make sure I got it perfectly right, so I did go back and re-listen to them. So let's get into it. Number 5 spot, we have One More Light. Now, let's just go ahead and get it out of the way. Also, if you want more of my deep insights about this album, check out the One More Light retrospective video on the Talking Music playlist of my channel. Listening to this album again, it's still kind of underwhelming compared to the other stuff, but if you take into account Chester's mental health and a lot of other things, this album has a lot of dark beauty to it. And I understand that by no means this is a shallow album. A lot of heart, soul, and stuff was poured into this, but it's just with regards to preference and execution of hooks and what Linkin Park had done well in the past. I just think it fell kind of flat, and the energy of this album isn't super high, even though you have more uplifting songs like Talking to Myself or maybe Battle Symphony, maybe Good Goodbye. There's still an air of depression behind that stuff, so it's not a super easy album to listen to. My favorite songs off of this album have always been, and it's like 3 songs in a row in the middle of the album. You got Invisible, one of my favorite chord progressions, the single Heavy, and the song Sorry for Now. And as I've said in other videos, the only reason why Sorry for Now isn't one of their best songs ever, it's because of that weird whiny effect they do post-chorus, the it sounds like that stupid auto-tuned baby, and it just kind of felt like they were kind of pandering to the modern day pop music crowd. So that's just kind of my personal grievance with that, but other than that, it is an excellent song. It just took a hit because of that preference that's just not pleasing to the ear for me. But Sharp Edges, even though there's a really dark theme behind it, Sharp Edges is a great closing track, and it's really uplifting and sad at the same time. Same thing with the opening track, Nobody Can Save Me. But where this album falls flat are the other singles. Good Goodbye, which is supposed to be a statement song to the haters, it doesn't have the best rap features. Mike Shinoda's rap verse is nowhere near his best. The chorus is okay, but I just don't think it's the hard-hitting song that it was meant to be. And then Battle Symphony is probably one of their weakest songs ever written. Halfway Right, same thing, just kind of a flat song, but One More Light is a beautiful song, just tugs at your heartstrings. And Talking to Myself, kind of like their Minutes to Midnight sounding alternative track. The music video for that song came out the day it was reported that he died. So there's a lot of sadness and bad, not sentimental value, but just bad association to that song. And it's really hard to talk about, but if I just were to look at it objectively, this is Linkin Park's kind of their weakest effort, in my opinion. But it doesn't mean that there's not value to it, and if you are more of a fan of that poppier stuff, they certainly didn't do a bad job at it. Again, middle tracks like Invisible, Heavy, and Sorry for Now, especially Invisible, Mike's vocals on that song, and just kind of the meaning for it behind it, as well as Sorry for Now, the message about him being away from his kids. It's really powerful. So this album has merit. It's just my least favorite Linkin Park album. Number 4 spot, of course, goes to 1,000 Suns, which is probably their most disjointed effort. You got a lot of random transition tracks in there. I guess you would call it a concept album. It is one of the albums that was prevalent during the winter of 2010, which is one of the more happy eras in my life, so I do have some positive association to this album. You had albums like After the Burials, I forgot what it was called, In Dreams album. You had Kanye West's 2010 album, My Dark Twisted Fantasy, which is one of the best albums of all time. And there was some other stuff going on too, to say the least. 1,000 Suns is a great album. It just kind of misses the mark in a few areas. But, again, we're talking about one of my favorite bands here, so Linkin Park really can't do any wrong. The experimentation they did on Minutes to Midnight really went further. This is probably their most experimental album, and it was executed pretty well. My favorite tracks are Robot Boy. That simple piano riff still has a great, powerful melody behind it, and the music and the lyrics. A song that I forgot that I liked was Wretches and Kings. If you replace that synthesizer with distorted guitars, it would straight up sound like a nu metal track. Like, even though Chester sounds like Middle Eastern when he's singing that chorus, sorry, Egyptian, I'm not trying to be insensitive with that. It sounds Egyptian, it sounds Middle Eastern. Um, Wretches and Kings is a fucking awesome song. Catalyst is great too. But again, there's just a couple weird drops in the album, like When They Come For Me, where, again, that's just a really weird experimental track. I get why they did it, but it's not the best effort. Neither is Blackout. I didn't rate any of the transition tracks, but Burning in the Skies is a pretty solid opening track. It's just really slow, so it doesn't set the tone for the best album. And then Waiting for the End is a pretty solid single, as well as The Catalyst. And yeah, so to summarize, all in all, a couple of solid tracks on this album, but not really an album I listen to from start to finish too often. The closing track, The Messenger, is kind of a depressing acoustic track. I'd rather listen to Sharp Edges, which is not a dig at Sharp Edges. I actually really like that song. And again, the opening track, Burning in the Skies, while it is a solid track, it's not one of their best opening tracks. So, Thousand Suns, great concept album, great album. Definitely better than One More Light, but still not a Linkin Park album I'd go listen to from start to finish right out the gate. Definitely worth a listen to if you're a fan. Number 3 album, Middle Spot, goes to their 2012 release, Living Things. Now, I did listen to this album quite a bit while it was fresh in 2012, and I thought that they were still very much leaning into the electronic sound over the nu metal sound, but I was okay with it. I was at a place in my life where I wasn't super into nu metal. At the time, I was more into post-hardcore, deathcore, gent, and a couple of other subgenres of metal and rock and alternative, metalcore, of course. I didn't really get super back into metalcore or nu metal until like 2013, 2014, and that's where Raptor Riot was born again. So I was really enjoying Living Things while it was fresh, and when I listened to it again, it's still a really solid, consistent album, and it could have possibly placed a little bit higher if it wasn't for 2 tracks. 3 tracks. Lies, Greed, Misery, Skin to Bone, and Until It Breaks. Those 3 tracks are not bad, they're just not great, and it just kind of dragged the score down. But there is a lot of consistently great tracks in this album. The first 3 tracks are powerhouses. You got Lost in the Echo, which is a very uplifting song, but it gets even more uplifting and powerful with In My Remains, which is probably the best track off the album. Burn It Down's another catchy, a lot of great synthesizer melodies, and Joseph Hahn really killing it on this album. I'll Be Gone, Castle of Glass, Victimized, Roads Untraveled, that's just 4 tracks in a row that are just solid from front to back. But then it closes on another one of their best tracks, Powerless. So it's very much an electronic album. Chester does do some screaming and Victimized, but it's mostly with the rap and the hip-hop and Chester singing. It's just a very well-rounded, well-balanced, more electronic Linkin Park album, but they don't lean too heavily into the melodic experimental side. They just do what they're really good at on one sound that they've had pretty much their entire career. But not a lot of guitar work, not a lot of raw drumming on this album, but I would probably say when it comes to their more experimental stuff, this is definitely their best album. Number 2 spot goes to The Hunting Party, 2014. I bought this album when it came out. It was an album that I listened to the summer of 2014 when I was lifeguarding during the summer, so I got a lot of good memories to this album. This was them supposedly coming back to maybe not their nu metal sound, but their heavier sound. And of course, that's why it resonates with me. You got heavy tracks, like most of them. Let's just talk about the non-heavy tracks. You got Until It's Gone, Mark the Graves. Was that a softer track? But yeah, pretty much every album on here is guitar and drum heavy. Chester does quite a bit of screaming. His vocals sound awesome on here. Mike Shinoda does a bit of rapping in songs like All for Nothing, which is one of my favorite tracks on the album. What else does he rap in? Wasteland. You got like a punk feel with a song like War. Keys to the Kingdom's a pretty solid opening track, and opening guitar riffs, great lead work with the solo, and then the solo in All for Nothing. You got like little guitar melodies and solos which you don't hear too often in Linkin Park, so Brad Nelson sounds great on this album. Um, Until It's Gone is one of the softer tracks, but it still sounds pretty cool. It wouldn't be a Linkin Park album unless there was some sort of alternative ballad. Um, Rebellion's pretty cool. I'm a little bummed that Darren Malkian's feature was limited to playing guitar. I was actually hoping to hear some vocals. If I'm mistaken on that, let me know. But Rebellion's a pretty cool track. Drawbar is a cool transition track with Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine. The last two tracks really cap off the album, or you got the bookend effect with this album. You got, at the beginning, Keys to the Kingdom and All for Nothing, and Guilty all the same. But then the closing tracks, Final Masquerade, which is just such a great song, and then Line in the Sand, which Line in the Sand sounds like Guilty all the same part 2. Here's the thing. I saw Linkin Park in 2015, thanks to my wife. So I feel like I saw them at the peak of their years. Yeah, I would have loved to have seen them in the early 2000s when they were playing purely Hybrid Theory and Meteora. But I feel like Chester's vocals got better over time. So when they played all their stuff up from that point, including, of course, the nu-metal material in 2015, his vocals were even better, mics were even better, and then when they played the heavier stuff, it sounded even heavier and even better, I imagine. So I feel like I saw Linkin Park in their prime while Chester was still alive, and I'm very grateful for that, and that's while they were touring this awesome album. This album is very easy to listen to from start to finish, and if you don't want to go full heavy, you want to go more like heavy alternative, maybe hard rock, with a little bit of nu-metal in there, this is a solid album for you to listen to. Definitely a sleeper, and I definitely wish they had continued with this sound before Chester's passed. I mean, I would prefer if Chester was still with us, but can't change it. But I really enjoyed what they did here. And that just leaves, of course, the number 1 album, which is Minutes to Midnight, which is probably their biggest album. I mean, people would probably still say that Hybrid Theory is their biggest album commercially. I think it is. It's one of the biggest albums in the world. I think it's like double platinum. I mean, I just know that it's massive. But if we're looking at Linkin Park as a whole, as all of the genres, their entire fan base, my guess is that the songs that are featured on Minutes to Midnight, like What I've Done, Given Up, it's probably still their biggest album. This was their first step into a new sound, and I get why they did it. I think they did it really well. Now, it was 2007. I was a sophomore in high school. I did have this album. I didn't own it. My girlfriend did. But I was very familiar with the album when it came out, and I was stoked about it. I wasn't a nu-metal loyalist that was pissed that they changed their sound, because they hadn't gone full experimental yet. They still had some heaviness and awesome tracks like Given Up and songs like No More Sorrow. What else? I guess Bleed It Out. But they really did do the melodic stuff very well too. Leave Out All the Rest is one of my favorite tracks from them, as well as Valentine's Day. I love that song. Shadow of the Day is also a solid single and track. But if we're looking at, kind of something in the middle, not pure ballad, but not pure heavy, the closing tracks in pieces are catchy and fun with a cool guitar solo. Little Things Give You Away, same deal. Very beautiful closing track with a great guitar solo, a lot of feel to it. Songs that I did not like in the past, like Hands Held High or In Between, because I wasn't super into ballady stuff back then. I have a lot more respect for that stuff now. So the way that Hunting Party is a very consistent, solid listening experience, same thing with Minutes to Midnight. There's just a few more iconic tracks off this album that elevate it up. You can't mess with the opening tracks, Given Up, that frickin' 45-second scream he does. Leave Out All the Rest is definitely one of their best ballads that's still got a kick to it. Like mayonnaise in a chicken salad. You gotta put some raisins in it, though, to cool off the heat. But No More Sorrow. Still another great song right there. And then What I've Done, we've all heard about it 1,000 times. I think it was in like Transformers or something. It's still an iconic single. So I got great memories to this album, and it's easily their best album if we don't count the Holy Trinity right here. And if anybody says this isn't a studio album, I really don't care. I still count this as a Linkin Park album, and this is just pure perfection right here. I get they're never going to be able to do it again because Chester's gone, but that Holy Trinity means the world to me. It's basically 3 bulletproof albums that defined a generation, defined a life, and fortunately Linkin Park was able to build on it with these and 3 other albums that I don't have on me right now because I don't own them. But all in all, Linkin Park has an excellent legacy, and Chester is still sorely missed, and we just only hope that whatever they do together in the future or in the current moment, if they're making music and we don't know about it, it's probably still going to be awesome because you still got 5 solid musicians in there that could still create great music. Mike Shinoda put out solid music by himself, and I'm sure the other guys maybe did some work as well. So thank you guys for watching this. Comment what you agree or disagree with. How would you rank them differently? And again, I only did not include the top 3, or the first 3, because again, it wouldn't be a fair fight. These are my 3 favorite Linkin Park albums, so I did their last 5. And if you have any stories about them, comment, subscribe. How would you do it differently? What are your favorite tracks? Yada, yada, yada. So, thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one. Wait a second. I gotta give you my top 10 tracks. From their last 5 albums. What I've Done, In My Remains, Powerless, Guilty All the Same, All for Nothing, Given Up, Valentine's Day, No More Sorrow, Leave Out All the Rest, and Invisible. So yeah, my favorite non-NuMetal Linkin Park song is from One More Light. I love Invisible. So, great job writing that.